America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. A neighbor's choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. So glad to be with you all once again, live on A Neighbor's Choice, where we're happy to have this time together. Usually I do my standard entrance, my introduction to the show, but today my headphones were caught up around one of the little posts on the desk we have here, and so that wasn't able to be done. But you know what time it is. It's time for the most electrifying show in media, and so I want to hit the ground running with some stories that are of interest to me today around this theme of the new elites and their universalism. That's the theme I want to explore in today's broadcast. A listener sent me a screenshot of somebody named Paul Portesi or someone, I don't know who this is, but just making a comment saying, GameStop, COVID, Trump, self-designated experts are trying to impose how the world should be viewed onto others, what we say, behave, or how we value, etc. Experts impose how the world should work. You see pushback in multiple domains. Centralized and top-down always fails. So these are themes that, we explore on this program a lot, but it's a nice way to look at other people's way of looking at these things. But those themes of GameStop, COVID, and Trump. Now, within those different themes, it's very irresistible to fall into a silo, to pick a side that's designated, okay, are you pro-Trump or anti-Trump? Are you pro everything about standard policies for COVID and so forth, or are you against everything that, and so they try to make everything so binary. And of course, sophisticated, intelligent adults like we are, we don't fall for that. We know that things are complicated. So one doesn't have to be a Trump fan to know that there seems to be a kind of designated official narrative about how you're supposed to perceive anything that Trump does versus anything his opponents does or do. Same thing with COVID. There's an official preferred narrative. We're in this together. Build back better. Great reset. All these little gimmick words, these little focus tested little sloganeering and so forth that all seem to be always pushing the herd to the next thing. And if you go off one little bit, yeah, you're not cool. You're not on the cool team. And the same thing goes with this GameStop thing. Now, this one's a little bit more tricky because this one appeals a little bit more to the populist heart of America that touches on both the left and the right. There are Bernie Sanders types that are big on rallying for the support of these Robin Hood amateur investors on Reddit who are trying to show off that they can flip the tables on the hedge fund billionaires. And then there's also folks on the right. So this one is one of those things that, like the Jeffrey Epstein story, the masses on both the left and the right are united together in their kind of narrative here. But yet the establishment is still kind of left to kind of, carry on the official narrative, which is, if you listen to CNBC and so forth, oh, we can't allow this to happen. We can't allow people to make a mockery of our tricks. We can't allow, outsider trading, right? That's what I've heard people say. This is outsider trading. You can't have that. Only insider trading. Only people who get together who are able to game the system and get the bailouts, they're able to profit off of other people's destruction. You can't go the other way. And so this is an example of Wall Street versus Main Street. This is an example of kind of the same sentiments that fueled both the Occupy Wall Street movement and the Tea Party movement, all kind of converging together once again. And these kind of moments are like this are good because when you deal with politics, of course, it's the persona stuff that catches people up, right? So people get stuck on personality and avatars of personality and character like Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or whatever. And these lightning rod personalities distract people from bigger themes, bigger values, bigger topics, bigger, principles to be pushed. But when you have these things that are not tied to a personality, things like a movement of young Main Street USA people trying to, support stocks that are kind of flailing around because they represent business models from the 90s and so forth that are not as successful today. It's something that I think allows people to cross over their political tribalism. And anytime we can have something like that, anytime America has a transpartisan movement where we can go beyond the party silos, that's a great thing. Now, that's the opposite of the bipartisan stuff from DC. That's the opposite. We don't want anything to do with bipartisan stuff in DC because that's always the worst. Anytime the DC team gets together and say, oh, we are united together, we get the Patriot Act, we get wars that are bad, we get all kinds of spending packages and detention and indefinite detention without a trial. All these horrible stuff always comes together when people do bipartisan in DC. But when the heartland and the populist left and right and so forth can come together on a narrative saying, yeah, I'm not so sure about this Epstein storyline, doesn't really make sense, or I'm not so sure that this is something that we should just allow to happen, where the Wall Street elites are able to profit off of other people's misery, but whenever the masses coordinate a similar move, oh no, already we see that the folks who were betting on the Wall Street Bets Reddit I believe has been temporarily suspended. Robinhood, the app that a lot of amateur stock investors are using for this kind of stuff, has suspended being able to deal with the stocks of GameStop and some of the other companies like AMC that have been coordinated in this little campaign. So it's just like social media. It's just like what we see in the news media, these giant little gated institutions, as some people call it. That's what I think Eric Weinstein calls it, gated institutions, or whatever word you want to use, the McWoke establishment. They all come together and they like to clamp down on people using freedom in a way that hurts their little insider clique. That's what it's all about. You see, it's all about that. It's all about freedom for us, no freedom for you. Freedom of speech for those who use the appropriate speech codes, and no freedom for you if you are a progressive outside of the bounds of what it means to be a progressive, or if you're a conservative or a populist or a libertarian. At some point, you want to ask these folks like AOC and John Brennan, these establishment corporatists, what do you want us to say? Tell us what we're allowed to say. And of course, they would love to be able to do that, but they don't like that question to be out in the open. They don't want that question to be acknowledged as something that's actually what they're pushing, which is they want to tell you what you're allowed to say, what you're allowed to think. And this is something that all good folks, people, whatever they think about, avatars like Trump and Pelosi, whatever, at the end of the day, we all have to be able to push back against this notion that we have to wait for somebody else to tell us what we can say, what we can think. What are we allowed to say, John Brennan? What are we allowed to say, AOC or Nancy Pelosi? What are we allowed to talk about? Are we allowed to talk about free speech? Are we allowed to criticize war? Are we allowed to, have social media platforms that critique these things? Are we allowed to, buy GameStop stock? Or are we only allowed to buy it when it's in a way that makes sure that only the rich and the elite insiders get to make money, not the little person? You can't have any creative acts from the little people. Then all of a sudden, everybody coordinates, just like they did with the free speech, the social media bans. Social media bans. Remember that? So you have a social media ban, and then people go over to platforms that are more free speech, and then the media and the app stores, Google and Apple, coordinate their oligarchy and block those platforms, and then Amazon takes them off their hosting and all of this stuff, right? So they coordinate all this stuff whenever the little people decide to do something that insults their ego. And these people have very fragile egos. Egos. Have you noticed that? They have extremely fragile egos. I mean, I hear, AOC ranting, raving about everybody as a white supremacist that doesn't agree with her now. That's what she's all about. I think she must be a white supremacist because all she does is talk about white supremacy. She's obsessed with, she's just obsessed with this concept of white supremacy. So maybe she's harboring white supremacist ideas because everything's that if you disagree with Nancy Pelosi's war machine, I guess you're a bad person. You're something. That's what she believes. Anybody who disagrees with her, she wants to call them basically an extremist, a racist, or whatever. But this is what people who have no arguments do. This is what people who are desperate and they believe that their grip on power is not giving them the results they thought it was going to give them. And so what do? They try to desperately keep it ratcheted up. Be extreme in your rhetoric, be extreme in your censorship. And we're not going to have that. We have to build a coalition of left and right folks that are agreeing with what I believe in. I think is what I believe in is the best of America, the idea of individual liberty, the idea of personhood, not collectivism, the idea of nonviolence, the idea of thinking for ourselves, of free speech, of private contract, of small businesses. This is the stuff that we all agree on, but we get so divided because of personalities and identity stuff, and all of that stuff divides us so that we can't work together to get these common sense values protected from people who are in a desperate march towards total control. And they cannot stand disagreement. They melt. They must be the most fragile, insecure, vulnerable little people you'd ever meet because they can't handle anybody saying, I don't agree with that. They delete you, get rid of you, call you a terrorist, anything. They have all the power. They got all the media outlets, the banks, and they're still that fragile. Man, it's a mile wide and an inch deep, isn't it? They got a mile wide of institutional power, but it's an inch deep in terms of its real substantive, deep entrenched roots into society. And that's why they're terrified. That's why they're desperate. And that's why they'll continue to flail around and make a fool of themselves and unite people more and more away from the fake left and right divide and towards freedom. And isn't that a great thing? Let's continue this in just a moment. I'm David Gornosky, back in a second. Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved two people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a reward. A sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pastures beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLSID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
You can't have a fresh outlook on the new year if you're staring through a chipped or cracked windshield. Autoglass America will fix it and give you up to $150 cash back to help pay holiday bills. With qualifying insurance, we'll come to you with mobile service and install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. Get a great outlook on the new year with a new windshield and New Year's cash from Autoglass America. 813-96-GLASS, 813-96-GLASS.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. You can join us on our video stream. Go to YouTube or Facebook live stream. Search for David Gronowski there. Or go to our website. That's the hub for all things A Neighbor's Choice, including our podcast, Things Hidden, which is an online only show. So if you're listening to us by radio, you're going to want to make sure you go to our website to catch our exclusive essays, editorials, our podcasts, our video series. Man, we got all multimedia content there. So much content. And we really love seeing the international audience that continues to join us in enjoying this content. This love of freedom, love of liberty, love of our neighbor as ourselves. This is the stuff that changes the world. This is the good stuff. And that's what we're always happy to have these conversations with the people we meet around the world who join us on A Neighbor's Choice in various different platforms. I also want to give a shout out to our friends at Oakley Transport. OakleyTransport.com is their website, and they're a great place to go if you're looking to really step up and become a driver that makes sure the stores are stocked with the food people count on. You know how strange this political situation is, where we had food shortages and we had empty shelves in some parts of America because of political mistakes and things that were made. And so you want to make sure that if you're the kind of person who doesn't mind really shouldering the burden of a foundational thing like keeping America fed, then perhaps it's time for you to consider taking on the career move of being a driver for Oakley Transport. So go to oakleytransport.com and let them know that A Neighbor's Choice sent you. And it's a great rewarding experience for a lot of people who love hitting the road all across America. So I want to continue on the theme of what I started with today, which is the new elites and their universalism. And one thing I saw, there's the new episode of the Tom Woods Show, episode 1823, Our Irreconcilable Division and What Should Happen Next. And Tom did a great shout out for my podcast, so I'm thankful that he did that, and that's very great. But I also wanted to comment on something I heard him say in that broadcast, talking about the difference between, say, nationalist and conservative movements and the one that is the liberal or the more left style movement, cultural movement. What's the distinctive there? And he made a good point, which has been made in different ways before, which is that the nationalist or conservative approach is more particular. It's more about, he gave the difference between a conservative or a nationalist person would be content to say, I'm concerned with my family's education, and I'm concerned with maybe my neighborhood's education and friends around me and in my own particular space. Whereas the liberal or the left-wing mentality is one in which it's more universalist. No, they won't be happy until the whole world thinks like them, right? Until the whole world submits their mind and their heart and their soul to the revolutionary cause that they feel inspired by. And that revolutionary cause ultimately is a vision of how the state should work, how it should function. And that's an interesting point. And it goes to what I've been telling you before about how the left is kind of the vestige of Christianity in some sense. Now that might offend folks because they'll say, well, I'm a Christian and I'm sure not a left winger. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about on the level of metaphysics or your religious identity. We're talking about the way in which Christianity was a unique force in history, one that had a kind of universalist call that wanted to change the whole world. Now, the Persian Empire had a religious zeal to go against the darkness of the world and to spread the truth and spread the light. But Christianity took it to a whole new level. And unfortunately, it did fall into the pagan way of doing it sometimes, in many ways, in religious wars and using the state and using force to spread the light in a way that is actually counter to the light of their founder, Jesus. But the church, by and large, introduced a unique zeal of universal themes of liberating people from captivity. I mean, that's the first sermon of Jesus, that he's come to set the captives free. And that liberation, that liberty movement, that idea is something that Christianity brought to the Western world. And now through the globalism and through the spread of our global market and ideas and culture, it is spreading throughout the whole world as well. And so when you look at that universalist ethic, you'll see that the left is kind of the more effective imitator of that role of Christianity in previous times in the West. That it has the same universalistic vision that the whole world should be baptized in the name of their ideology. But the problem with their ideology is there's none of the beauty of Christianity. There's none of the forgiveness. There's none of the love of the individual person. It's seeing everybody in a tribe, seeing everybody in an identity group, and everybody is got to conform by force. And it's sitting in a situation where you have an environment of intolerance, ultimately, with the left-wing project. No forgiveness, no mercy, no consideration. Everybody's either, you're either with them and they're constantly updating strident views, or you are second class, to say the least. And that's the way they want it, and they don't want to let off the gas. So what do we do when so many people are swept up in that kind of revolutionary religious zeal? Well, we got to deal with them the way Jesus dealt with religious fundamentalists, people who were hypocrites in that way. We have to deprogram them one by one, not through some kind of rhetorical slide or some kind of programming in the way they think of programming, but simply allow them to see their neighbor for who they are, to see the violence of the policies that they say they want, to let them see the brokenness and to let them see that the people that are sacrificed for their God of the state are real, that real sacrifices are happening to make their policies go into effect. Whatever it is, whether it's social engineering or speech attacks or attacks against self-defense, attacks against the economic freedoms of our neighbors and so forth, there are real victims behind their policies, and that these victims should have a voice. And that when we give a voice to the real victims of these policies, it has a way of softening the appetite for folks who want this kind of zealous messianic state. So this is a very interesting time. This is a time when Christians who truly want to imitate Jesus can step up to the plate and help call people out of this religious zeal that has no tolerance and does not see the human person as dignified and sacred. We have to remind them of the sacredness of every human being. And we have to bring them out of the hypnotic trance of following into the groupthink, following into the hive mind that is ultimately fueled by fear. Fear of standing out, fear of being too different, fear of not being cool enough, fear of natural diseases, fear of the plague, fear of the end of the world. All these things they use to create fear in people, which emboldens people to fall into line with their bad ideas. But we got to call people out neighbor by neighbor, individual by individual. So important. Back in just a moment, in just a short news break.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040 WHP.
President Biden issuing new health care executive orders today.
The executive orders reopens the Affordable Care Act's insurance enrollment that President Trump had restricted. It also reexamines orders that made it tougher to enroll in Medicaid and reverses Trump's order that restricted abortion access in the U.S. and overseas.
There's nothing new that we're doing.
And the president saying,
basically, the best way to describe them, to undo the damage Trump has done.
Andy Field, ABC News, Washington.
The federal government also ramping up distribution and vaccination plans with states. White House COVID coordinator and former Representative Max Rose at a Pentagon briefing today says the Department of Defense also standing by to help whenever needed.
DoD has over 1,000 military medical personnel on prepared to deploy orders available to support state and local requests for assistance.
Stocks regaining some of yesterday's losses. The Dow closing up 300 points today. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm David Gronowski, your host of this broadcast. We're live on FM and AM and podcast and video stream. We've got you covered on all those different platforms. And now joining me is the CEO and founder of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski. How you doing, Adam?
Great to be on the program. Thank you very much for your interest in our work.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on the program, and we've always enjoyed your discussions, your insights. Your specialty with OpenTheBooks.com is just like the title is. It's about looking at all the details of spending and policies and regulations in federal government in particular, right?
Well, and we work really hard toward that end. Last year, for the first time in American history, we filed over 40,000 Freedom of Information Act requests on nearly every single substantial public body in this entire country, both at the federal, state, and the local level. So you can come to our website at openthebooks.com and you can follow the money with the express purpose to hold the political class accountable for tax and spend decisions.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into this story that caught my attention this week that you put out on Forbes as well as your website. It's called Paper Pushing, Traditional and Regulatory. U.S. Agencies Continue to Stockpile Firepower Under President Trump.
Right. So, I mean, it's a big report. What we did is we looked at, in the last 5 years, and we were the folks that broke at the Wall Street Journal in 2016, the Obama administration and the purchase of guns, ammunition, and military-style equipment. And we updated that report to include the majority of the Trump administration. And what we found was that the paper-pushing traditional and regulatory agencies continued to stockpile guns, ammunition, and military-style equipment during the Trump administration.
Right. So let's get into that. What are some of the things? Because that's something that, we're talking about the Second Amendment a lot of times in circles, but I don't think we mean it that way, where federal agencies just get armed to the teeth about every little thing imaginable, right?
Well, exactly. And conservatives have a great argument that it's hypocritical for political leaders to criticize private gun ownership while simultaneously equipping non-military federal agencies with hollow point bullets, military-style equipment, guns, and ammunition. So look, over the last couple of decades, the size, scope, and power of the federal government has vastly increased. And after grabbing legal power, federal bureaucrats, we found they're amassing firepower. So you have, like the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, they own 600 guns. There are nearly 500 special agents over at Health and Human Services, for crying out loud, that are armed with sophisticated military weaponry, and they're trained by the same military special forces defense contractors. It's even the special agents at NASA, the space agency, are armed with machine guns and AR-15s.
Goodness. Now, what do they need that for? Is there aliens coming that we're not aware of?
I don't know what they know that we don't. Look, it's so bad. You've got a museum force and a zoo force, 625 officers over at the Smithsonian Institution. And the Smithsonian Institution, a lot of people don't realize, they also are in charge of the National Zoo. So look, guarding those panda bears, I mean, that's expensive.
Are you telling me they've got tanks running the panda bears over there?
We saw drones in the data, body armor, and then, guns for police officers.
Now, what do you need body armor to deal with a panda bear? They can barely bite through the bamboo. Why would they bite through?
So look, there's over 250,000 guns at the Department of Homeland Security. Now that's a bona fide law enforcement agency. It wasn't started till after 9/11. You've got about 50,000 federal officers with arrest and firearm authority over at the Department of Justice. We quantified the number of federal officers with firearm authority. It's over 200,000. And the comparison is versus the United States Marines. There's 186,000 United States Marines. We have more federal officers authorized to carry a weapon than we do Marines.
Right. Wow. And then, so what are some of the other ones? And this was all under Trump's watch. So they talk a big deal about how, big changes were happening, but it was really just the status quo. They just didn't like his rhetoric at the top, I guess. But so we've got, what about the FDA? Did you look into how many guns they have to get people to drop the raw milk and the cow udders that they're squeezing illegally across the country?
So over at Ag, there are thousands of federal employees, and we can't even count how many that are authorized to carry a firearm. By federal statute, thousands of Department of Agriculture employees are authorized to carry. But that's not even in the number of 200,000. That's just extra on top of that. We did take a look at the Internal Revenue Service. There's about 2,100 special agents. The IRS owns 4,500 guns. They've stockpiled 5 million rounds of ammunition over at the IRS. They even have they've even stockpiled submachine guns.
And so they sound like a bunch of people at Waco almost,
Well, even the Social Security Administration, maybe Granny ought to get her gun, because over at the Social Security Administration, they hand out the checks on Social Security, but they purchased almost 1 million rounds of ammunition over the course of the last 8 years.
And the EPA, what are they using you said they spent $61,650 purchasing body armor systems. And I hope those body armor systems were plant-based and not using, some kind of dirty chemicals that destroys the environment.
Oh, don't count on it, right? So the EPA special agents, I think we need to default to Karl Rove on this. In 2016, during the summer, from the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal, Karl Rove wrote that he foresaw the day when armed agents of the EPA would storm down the doors of ExxonMobil. Okay, look, they have 137 special agents. They not only have body armor, but all kinds of different things. And the agency itself owns 600 guns. So look, the infrastructure is there. And it's now there for the Biden administration.
Right. Right. It's a bizarre world to look at these things. You said the EPA has a gun locker that includes 867,000 rounds of ammo and 600 guns.
That's right. Exactly. And look, the VA, Veterans Affairs, you know, they can barely take care of our nation's sick veterans. In 1996, they had 0 police officers. They didn't have a police force. Today, they've got a police force of almost 4,000 officers. They spent $26 million since 2010, and they've stockpiled 11 million rounds of ammunition for their police force. And they have all kinds of weaponry over there at the VA. So I think they're off mission.
Wow. So that's the thing. The left always talks about the dangers of gun violence, but they don't really care about the guns that are being stockpiled like it's a bunch of Waco people for the end of the world at all these agencies. You know, they've got loads and loads of ammo, but all they're doing is just peacefully regulating, right? I mean, what is the point of all this? I don't understand why, you know, I mean, your article says there's 200,000 plus non-DOD federal employees with firearms, more than there are U.S. Marines.
And we think there needs to be reorganization of these police forces. We think it's out of control. So look, if you have a legitimate law enforcement need, and if you're a rank and file traditional paper pushing regulatory agency, I think we should, you know, expand traditional police officers at the federal level, coming out of the Department of Justice, coming out of the Department of Homeland Security, like the U.S. Marshals. Maybe they should increase the ranks of the U.S. Marshals and put legitimate policing power where it should be, and that's with a legitimate traditional law enforcement agency and not a regulatory agency.
Right. So how come this never gets any serious reform? It's just something that conservatives just pass the buck, like always, on all the things that they say they're going to do?
So at the Wall Street Journal with former U.S. Senator Dr. Tom Coburn, he was our honorary chairman. Coburn passed in March. Coburn and I, we co-authored a piece on the Obama administration. We sounded the alarm on the militarization of these federal agencies back in 2016. We were hopeful that President Trump would put an end to this. The base certainly wanted to put an end to this, but what the new data shows is that Trump continued to practice.
Right. And yet still he was insufferable for the establishment to have them in there. It's just amazing, the pettiness out of D.C. I want to switch gears to something else you wrote about real quick while we have you, about Dr. Anthony Fauci, the highest paid employee in the entire U.S. federal government. Can you get into that?
Well, this was the other big story this week. So we broke this on Monday at 6 a.m. Central Time. We're based in Illinois, the Super Bowl of corruption. So we broke it early, and we looked at our federal salary data, and we found that Dr. Anthony Fauci, out of 4 million federal employees, and that's 2.1 million in the executive agencies, 1.4 million in our military, 500,000 at the post office, 4 million federal employees. Dr. Anthony Fauci, he was number one, the most highly compensated federal employee, and that included the President of the United States himself. The president makes 400,000. Dr. Fauci last year made $417,000.
Right. And for that, he has the genius idea of funding the gain of function labs of coronavirus research in places like the Wuhan lab. Not to say that we know for sure that that's where this thing came from, but in a time in which a virus spreads wildly, coronavirus, like it has, destroying so many people's lives and businesses and livelihoods and so forth and world economies, it's amazing that the highest paid federal employee in the land is a guy who has in the past been actively funding the gain of function, research for these different coronaviruses. Isn't that strange? It's just the idea on its face is stupid, isn't it? Just think about that for a moment. Take away from the fact that there's an argument that people have said that perhaps this Wuhan lab, that Obama put a moratorium on funding the gain of function research for viruses. And then Fauci kept it going with his institute where he gave the money to the EcoHealth Alliance. And then they kept the money going into the Wuhan lab to look at these coronavirus families and looking how to make them, connected to human cells. Now, I assume that had nothing to do with this virus, just the fact of what we have seen with the massive devastation of a coronavirus coming over to the human population. And that's the guy, that's the genius idea that gets the highest paid salary on the federal workforce. Isn't that amazing? Just think about it.
It is amazing. And look, he's the current chief medical advisor to the president, and his advice right out of the blocks was suspect. He was against the travel ban. This thing would have been a lot worse in America if Trump had not shut down early, as soon as possible, travel from China and then from Europe. And Trump took a lot of heat, not only from Fauci, but from others on that. And then Fauci's advice was just plain wrong. Right. And I think it'll go down as one of the worst political decisions in the last 100 years of the national lockdown for 15 days in March. And then he advocated, and the president was against it. Fauci was not successful convincing the president to do another lockdown after that. So look, his advice was wrong, but he makes a tremendous amount of money. We were holding 10 years of his payroll. Just 5 years ago, he was making $335,000, probably still way too much money. Today, he's up nearly $100,000 just in the past 5 years. He out-earned the vice president, which was the vice president made $235,000. He out-earns four-star generals in the military. I don't think we have a five-star general now. The four-star generals make little less than $270,000. So the guy makes a tremendous amount of money and out-earns everybody, the 4 million federal employees, and his advice wasn't that great.
Yeah, to say the least. Well, Adam Andrzejewski, it's always great to have you on the program, and we want people to check out openthebooks.com. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for your interest in our work.
Very good. We'll continue live on A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski. Back in a moment. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Get the best coverage of the big game from a source you can trust. TampaBay.com. Powered by the Tampa Bay Times award-winning sports department, you'll get insights on the X's and O's, plus the latest updates from on and off the field. Subscribe now, and you'll receive an additional 20% off total access to TampaBay.com. From the greatest game of all time to the greatest quarterback of all time, choose the Tampa Bay time. Go to TampaBay.com today.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski here live on AM, FM, and podcast video stream. I want to go back to the topic we were starting with at the beginning of this broadcast hour, where I was talking about the new elites and their very, very aggressive universalist mission that they feel that they need to remake the world and their ever-changing vision. And they are very, very intolerant when anyone disagrees. If someone says, hey, you know what, I also want a clean earth. I want a pollution-free world. I want energy too cheap to meter. But if that person doesn't get on board with their political program, they are anathema to the left. Anathema. They have no place. They will be attacked, pilloried, attacked viciously by these little mean haters. And the same goes for any other topic. If you agree with them on the big part of it, but you don't go along with their religious zeal for sacrificial control, they can't stand you. This is like a jihadist type mindset. Where remember they're destroying statues? The left is trying to destroy statues of everything that they're scared of. Oh, capitalism, destroy it by force, instead of reforming capitalism by creating virtue and ethics that makes the people who act in the market more, moral and virtuous in the way they conduct their business. Using, contract law and lawsuits and tort and fraud and things like that to weed out bad actors. Using skin in the game to weed out bad actors, which is much, much more effective than a deeply captured regulatory machine armed to the teeth and totally bought and sold by the, agencies. I mean, the businesses that they're supposed to be keeping in check. If you're for ending diseases and helping poor people solve diseases without being bankrupt to do it, like the left says they're for, they can't stand you still if you're not on board with using an all-powerful nanny state to do it. If you say, hey, actually we don't need to do a whole takeover completely of government, of healthcare. It's already 80% controlled by government anyways. You don't need to go the full 100% way. The left can't stand it. They can't take you for who you are when you say, I want a world in which there's no diseases. Let's get there. They can't stand it. If you say, hey, I want a world where people are not torn apart in, drug war or something like that, but you don't go along with making it all about pitting people against each other by race like the left demands, they can't stand you. They don't care if you actually free more people of color, the term they use, right? If you literally free more people of color than their left-wing person, but you don't mouth their racial divisive obsession, they can't stand you, right? They have no tolerance for pragmatic. Now, I know there are a lot of real progressives out there who are not part of this way of thinking, that are not part of this same, zeal. But you got to speak up, because we need to have these conversations with those folks now before we continue to fall into this never-ending madness spiral. So let's talk about these new elites. There was this article that has been making the rounds, a lot of people talking about it, in tabletmag.com, The New National American Elite. And it's by Michael Lind, and it says, America is now ruled by a single elite class rather than by local patrician smart sets competing with each other for money and power. It's published just recently here. And a lot of people buzzing about it and just got good ideas here to think about. And I haven't read the full thing, but I was reading part of it, and I saw some things that I thought would be of interest to you to understand this new elite, whatever you want to call it. It says membership in the multiracial post-ethnic national overclass depends chiefly on graduation with a diploma, preferably a graduate or professional degree from an Ivy League school or a selective state university, which makes the Ivy League the new social register. But a diploma from the Ivy League or a top-ranked state university by itself is not sufficient for admission to the new national overclass. Like all ruling classes, the new American overclass uses cues like dialect, religion, and values to distinguish insiders from outsiders. Dialect. You may have been at the top of your class in Harvard Business School, but if you pronounce 33rd toid or have a southern drawl, you might consider speech therapy. Religion. You may have edited the Yale Law Review, but if you tell interviewers that you recently accepted Jesus Christ as your personal savior or fondle a rosary during the interview, don't expect a job at a prestige firm. Values. This is the trickiest set because the ruling class is constantly changing its shibboleths in order to distinguish true members of the inner circle from vulgar imposters who are trying to break into the elite. A decade ago, as a member of the American overclass, you could get away with saying, along with Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, I believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, but I strongly support civil unions for gay men and lesbians. In 2020, you are expected to say, I strongly support trans rights. You will flunk the interview if you start going on about civil unions. More and more Americans are figuring out that wokeness functions in the new centralized American elite as a device to exclude working class Americans of all races, along with backward remnants of the old regional elites. In effect, the new national oligarchy changes the codes and the passwords every 6 months or so and notifies its members through the universities and the prestige media and Twitter. America's working class majority of all races pays far less attention than the elite to the media and is highly unlikely to have a kid at Harvard or Yale to clue them in. And non-college educated Americans spend very little time on Facebook and Twitter, the latter of which they are unlikely to be able to identify, which, among other things, proves the idiocy of the Russiagate theory that Vladimir Putin brainwashed white working class Americans into voting for Trump by memes and social media, which they are the least likely American voters to see. Constantly replacing old terms with new terms known only to the oligarchs is a brilliant strategy of social exclusion. The rationale is supposed to be that this shows greater respect for particular groups, but there was no grassroots working class movement among Black Americans demanding the use of enslaved persons as a term instead of slaves. And the overwhelming majority of Americans of Latin American descent, a wildly homogenizing category created by the U.S. Census Bureau, reject the weird term Latinx or Latinx or whatever that's supposed to be. Woke speech is simply a ruling class dialect, which must be updated frequently to keep the lower orders from breaking the code and successfully imitating their betters. Mrs. Astor would approve. So that's a great story. Michael Lind is a professor at University of Texas at Austin, the author of this of this article. So check it out. But it's just a reminder of what we've been saying, is that this so-called ruling class, they're fragile, they're a mile wide in terms of their institutional control, but an inch deep in understanding where the public actually is. The vast majority of us, we don't want this nonsense. We don't want their bigotry. We don't want their Luddite anti-science technology, anti-technology, anti-science ideas. We want freedom. We want to breathe in the fresh air of freedom together. Isn't that right? Let's take a quick break. We'll return in just a moment. But for now, Godspeed.
Your home home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park, Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. More Americans who have lost health care coverage in this pandemic or missed the registration window now have another chance.
Healthcare.gov is reopened for business. With COVID-19 still raging across the nation, President Biden today signing executive action aimed at expanding healthcare coverage through the Affordable Care Act, a special 3-month enrollment period from February 15th through May 15th.
As we continue to battle COVID-19, even more critical Americans have meaningful access to health care.
Nearly 30 million Americans were uninsured before the pandemic hit. That number almost certainly grew in 2020 because of COVID-19 related job losses. Karen Travers, ABC News, Washington.
House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy met for lunch with former President Trump at his estate in Florida today. McCarthy put out a statement afterward saying that Trump is committed to helping the GOP win Congress seats in 2022. After the Capitol siege by a mob of Trump supporters, McCarthy said Trump, quote, bears responsibility, but McCarthy also said he did not support impeachment. Homeland Security issuing a rare national terrorism advisory warning that violent extremists could strike again after the Capitol attack, and there are more cases of that. Andy Field in Washington.
Threats against the U.S. Capitol continued with 71-year-old Dennis Westover driving from West Virginia to Washington, D.C. and shouting at National Guardsmen behind a protective security fence. Police asked if he had a weapon. He did, a 9mm pistol and several rounds of bullets. He also had a list of senators and congressmen and their locations and a Stop the Steal sign. He told police he knows the election fight is over. He was arraigned and released.
As vaccinations ramp up, the COVID-19 variant from South Africa has been identified here in the U.S. That's a first. 2 cases confirmed in South Carolina. You're listening to ABC News.
Cindy and her husband felt stuck paying annual fees on their timeshare. But what could they do?
We tried to sell it, but no results. No results at all.
Then they called Newton Group, and that's when things really started to happen.
We got a call within days. We never felt like they forgot us because we would get updates along the way.
Before long, they were free and clear.
We signed up with Newton Group in August, and it was a done deal by January.
And how's Cindy now?
We're very happy with Newton Group. It was a very, very positive experience for us, and we highly recommend them. And we are looking forward to not having to pay the $1,500 a year.
Do what Cindy did. Call Newton Group for your free consultation and free consumer's guide to timeshare exit. Call 877-TOP-EXIT. That's 877-TOP-EXIT. Newton Group has an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, so call them at 877-TOP-EXIT or visit newtonexit.com today.
In Georgia, 6 people died after a liquid nitrogen leak at a poultry plant outside Atlanta. Hall County Sheriff Gerald Couch asking for thoughts and prayers for those victims and families.
Well, these folks that came into work today did not have any idea of what would happen, nor did their families. They're not in a profession that you would expect something like this to happen.
The nitrogen used for refrigeration at Prime Pack Foods in Gainesville is the cause of the leak, and it's still unknown. At least 3 people are in critical condition, first responders among those injured. General Motors is going all electric, the automaker announcing it will end the sale of gas and diesel-powered cars and SUVs by 2035. That excludes medium and heavy-duty trucks. GM says it wants to be carbon neutral by 2040. He's responsible for some of the TV's most talked about programs. At the end of February, he will be getting an award.
He's the man behind landmark TV shows like The Jeffersons, All in the Family, and Good Times. Now, Norman Lear will be the recipient of the Carol Burnett Award at the Golden Globes for outstanding contribution to television on and off screen.
All in the Family was recorded.
Known for his social and political activism, too, Lear's career spans decades after serving in World War II, starting off in public relations, and at 98, still at work producing new films and shows, including a Rita Moreno documentary and an animated take on Good Times for Netflix.
ABC's Matt Wolf. This is ABC News.
The Rocket Mortgage Super Bowl Squares sweepstakes is back. Every time the score changes, someone wins $50,000. Plus, 2 grand prize winners will win $500,000 they could use toward their dream home. See rules and enter for free at RocketMortgageSquares.com. Rocket Mortgage, official mortgage sponsor of Super Bowl 55.
No purchase necessary. Legal residents of the 50 U.S. and D.C. of age majority. Ends February 4th. Licensed in all 50 states and MLS number 3030. The NFL is not sponsored promotion in any way.
Michelle Franzen, ABC.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your neighbor, David Gronowski, your host, and so glad to have this time to discuss things that are of importance, things that you don't hear on any other broadcast. And we're live on FM, AM, video stream, podcast, wherever you're listening or watching us on. Always glad for your comments, always glad to have your feedback, always glad to have the discussions that we have. We're going to grow and grow and grow together. We're going to build a community that inspires people, that makes people have hope, not baseless hope, but real tangible hope, by taking care of the things that you can take care of, staying out of debt, staying out of ignorance, by equipping yourself with proper education, self-education, staying out of frivolous credit and debt consumption, just staying out of that stuff, staying out of bad foods, stop eating the seed oils that the government subsidizes on your dime and makes you sick with. Stay away from those things. They're not good. Even if they call them plant-based oils, they're still slop. They're still industrial toxic stuff that doesn't do a good number on your body. These are things that we have to celebrate and support. And one of the things that we always do on this program is we talk about science in you. And that's why we're going to go ahead and do our Science and You segment that we do every Thursday. That's where you and science come together for a glorious dance of learning and growing together, thinking about the physical world, learning more about atoms, learning more about chemistry, because those things matter. We have all the innovation in the world of bits, as Peter Thiel has said in the past with his book 0 to 1. All the innovation happens in the world of bits, but not much innovation is happening in the world of atoms, and we're trying to change that on this program by talking about things that we can think about in the world of atoms. And that's why we're joined by our physicist friend, Chief Science Advisor for all things The Neighbor's Choice, Dr. Yu. How you doing?
Thank you, David, for having me, and I'm doing great. So, thanks.
So always great to hear from you. So let's kick the show off by looking at this story in yahoo.com. Jeff Bezos is backing an ancient kind of nuclear fusion. This is by Carolyn Delbert. This is small fusion reactors could have their breakthrough moment far sooner than large projects. The Jeff Bezos-backed General Fusion and Commonwealth Fusion Systems both are targeting 2025. These reactors use extraordinary magnets to pressurize elements into superhot plasma. 2 competing nuclear fusion companies, each with venture capital superstars, as major investors say, we are approaching the Kitty Hawk moment for their technology as early as 2025. So it's getting closer, Dr. Yu, these fusion guys. Is this it? Is this going to be the one we've been looking for?
That's a huge improvement by far. Yes. Fusion is the hardest, energy research to date, right? And every time they're talking about it, it's not just like this one 5 years away, 2025. Most are talking about 25 years away, 20 to 25 years away. So Jeff Bezos backing this called a traditional Asian kind of reactor. The difference is One is a Canadian company. It's called General Fusion. This is just like a 10 feet in diameter. Almost you can set on any laboratory and desktop type. It's very small, and it still use a magnetic target fusion type of reactor. Use a huge super magnets try to contain plasma field away from the wall, right? Yeah, that's the similar. However, the difference is in all the international project, fusion project. So they use high heat, use external power, say lasers or high or electrical external powers generate a huge heat. This case, so they use called a piston, like a compressed air. Internal, use piston, compress them, and create a huge heat and a reaction. So generate the neutrons and create the plasma. So that's why the size is very small. They don't use a humongous because they just like a pressure vessel. You compress them, use a piston internally. So yeah, that's something I saw that it's something new and it's very small, very for self-use, family use type of heat. And another one is relatively larger. It's an American company called the Commonwealth Fusion System. So this one still use a magnet, say 10 tons of magnet at the heart of the fusion reactors, nothing. However, they use a superconducting magnets. So you require superconducting magnets. Of course, you have to have a containing a super cold environment and use super magnets and the trapping and the pressurize something. So that's something a little bit different. And so that's why Bezos invest tons of money, and hopefully one of them will be successful and will leapfrog and changing the generations. So that's very significant.
So do you think, based on the description of these models, that they have the right physics model in mind to do actual energy this time? Is it going to work?
I think so. The first one, the Canadian one, the General Fusion, basically your tabletop device, right? Under huge piston pressure, create the internal combustion type of thing. I believe this could work. However, why they tried this kind of technologies, Asian tech, why they try so many times, still not working? I believe they're still missing a key element. Excitation of magnetic field. Okay, I think I can help them to, if uses some kind of coil, create a magnetic vibration, exciting them. That should be, it could make this one better than anybody else. So
are they not using the traditional hot thermonuclear fusion approach with this one? Is this an LENR that Jeff Bezos is doing?
Right. That's not use traditional one. Use high heat, lasers, whatever you can create heat, and you put electricity, you create heat, whatever you can do, you do that one. And this is a different. So like a pressure vessel type, and by compression create high heat, containing in the center of the pressure vessel, use magnets pushing this plasma little bit away from the wall. Yeah.
Interesting. So they actually may be onto something with this one. For once, we actually have a model that actually looks promising, huh?
Yes, but based on the article I'm looking at, they're still missing one key element to make true reaction work. So, I hope the people may notice something and find some way to improve this.
So is it something that it seems that they could stumble on easily, or would they have to rethink their whole approach to what's happening? As you've mentioned before, fusion is not actually what's occurring; it's a type of fission in these experiments, right? So is it something that they could actually stumble on most likely, or do they need to have their model corrected of the atom to be able to figure out the addition that you're suggesting?
Of course, they needed to understand the fusion reactor theory may guiding them better perfect their device. That's because current flaw in the nuclear fusion theory. Of course, that one. But the way they are developing this kind of device is based on the try and error. So I'm not saying, okay, because you don't understand, but maybe this by try and error, maybe generate more heat, then more energy output than your input. It could be try and error, could be just blindsided. It could be stumble on something work. So I'm not dismissed completely.
But and the Commonwealth one, what about that model makes you think they might be onto something, or are they not on the same page?
Right, the Commonwealth one, uses tendons, huge magnetic, magnets try to hit that one away with a superconducting magnets. I believe that could be induce lots of cost, and I really do not expecting that one will be anything you can complete, in 5 years, in 2025. I don't believe it. Maybe both of them may be not able to create future energy by 2025.
Right.
It's a very aggressive schedule. You need a lot of you need a deeper understanding of nuclear fusion reaction theory. That's number one. Number two, and you need the testing how to more efficient generate the heat, generate more energy than input. If you cannot generate more energy than input, just like a traditional one, all the energy, all the money spent on how to keep heat away from the wall of the equipment. So that you're consuming energy not on the results, on the one of the problem you cannot solve. So
well, very good. We're doing our Science and You edition of A Neighbor's Choice here with Dr. Yu, physicist. We'll be taking a quick break and return in just a moment, unpacking more science headlines and things that we can see. Someone online asked you, Lutra23 asked, does Dr. Yu know about ball lightning? Let's take a quick break and return in just a moment. Hello, this is David Kronosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Do you despise lawyers? That may be the case until you need one. If you've been in an auto accident and need legal advice, go to the local attorneys that have served Tampa Bay families for over 28 years. Catania and Catania. They are family owned. They understand your legal situation. When you need legal representation, Catania and Catania will care for your case from the beginning to the end of representation. You won't need to worry. Catania and Catania will represent you through the entire process. Auto or motorcycle accidents are too frequent in Florida. Catania and Catania. They don't get paid if you don't get paid. Referrals on request. Contact Catania and Catania. Putting families first. Offices, Tampa. Not attorney spokesperson.
You can't have a fresh outlook on the new year if you're staring through a chipped or cracked windshield. Autoglass America will fix it and give you up to $150 cash back to help pay holiday bills. With qualifying insurance, we'll come to you with mobile service and install a premium quality replacement with a lifetime warranty at no cost to you. Get a great outlook on the new year with a new windshield and New Year's cash from Autoglass America. 813-96-GLASS, 813-96-GLASS.
Hello, David Granosky here. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. I want to give a quick shout out to our friends at OakleyTransport.com. OakleyTransport.com is the place to go if you're looking to start a new career or maybe take your career in driving to the next level, because they keep America fed. They provide products, food grade, liquids all across this country. And it's very important that we keep the store shelves stocked with things that we count on and depend on. And it depends on great quality, safe drivers. So if you're interested in jump-starting a career in this line of work and hitting the road in service of the things that people depend on to keep normal, everyday life going, then you'll want to go to OakleyTransport.com and let them know that A Neighbor's Choice sent you and start your career today. It's a great opportunity for folks who are excited about such an adventurous type job. I want to return now to our Science and You segment. We're joined by Dr. Yu, our physicist friend. And Dr. Yu, do I have a story for you? You're going to be so excited for this. Are you ready?
Okay.
Man, I find all the stories that just confirm your theoretical insights. I mean, I'm telling you, this is just, here we are. You ready for this?
Okay.
This is cosmosmagazine.com. Animal magnetism is real, the headline. So this story is talking about something we're going to get into, but just for folks who are new to the show, Dr. Yu believes that all particles, all atomic particles, subatomic particles, are all magnetic particles having both dipole, positive and negative charge, right, Dr. Yu?
Yes,
Okay.
magnetic charge.
So once again, for about the 10,000th time, let's see if this story confirms our hypothesis that you've made. So it says a study by Richard Harris and Brian Fry of the University of Queensland found that snakes may have evolved to resist their own venom by utilizing a magnet-like mechanism to repel the molecules in their venom from damaging their nerves. While all snake venom contains toxins, only some are neurotoxins, those that damage nerve tissue and help a venomous snake slow down or kill its prey. They work by disrupting the signals that tell nerves what to do. A nerve releases the neurotransmitter acetylcholine that acts as an email telling the muscle to contract, explains Fry. The toxins block the binding of the acetylcholine to the receptor located on the muscle, thereby preventing these instructions from getting through. This happens because neurotoxins have a positive charge and are pulled towards molecules with a negative charge, such as these receptors. This is an electrostatic interaction that pulls the molecules together like a magnet. But not all snakes experience this. In a delightful collision of biology and physics and chemistry, the researchers found that some snakes evolved to have a different positively charged molecule, lysine, in the place of the normal receptor amino acids. This instead makes both molecules positively charged and pushes them apart, they show in their paper published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society. B. In this form of resistance, a mutation occurs where a newly evolved positively charged amino acid, lysine, replaces one or both of the characteristic negatively charged amino acids in the nerve receptor, thereby repelling the neurotoxins since same charges repel each other, says Fry. An analogy would be like two magnets with the same side facing each other. Even more bizarrely and wonderfully, this appeared to be a trait that was picked up in many different snakes in a case of convergent evolution, where species developed a shared trait that has nothing to do with their genetic ancestry. That's important, Dr. Yu, right? We have shown that it has evolved independently on 10 separate occasions, 8 times within different snakes that are prey for venomous snakes, and 2 times in venomous snakes as a form of resistance to their own venom. Pleasingly, no snakes were harmed in the research process. The technology we are using is a really novel approach that allows us to construct artificial nerves, which gives us the flexibility to make all sorts of mutant versions to test structure, activity, relationships. But since it's animal-free, it's not only more efficient, but more ethical. What do you think of that, Dr. Yu? Huh?
Well, just like your opening statement, you said that this is exact confirmation of all the venom, all the cells, and actually every single molecules and atoms and the nucleus, they all made by magnetic materials, magnetic particles. And the only difference is the structure different. When you have a different structure, of course, your interaction, all the interactions through magnetic field, right? Different structure will give you different magnetic strengths to interact or to reject, either attract or maybe repel, or maybe magnetic couple rotate. So that's how different, just say, between the different molecules, atoms, and just the structure of magnetic particles are different. So this is a confirmation by their testing, 10 times, 100 times, they find out that this is magnetic interaction. So-called, sometimes it's electrostatic. It's actually, it is electrostatic interaction is a magnetic interaction, either attract or repel. So that's I'm already thrilled by all the recent discoveries, and to be short for the audience, all the future discoveries, interactions, and all the phenomena, they are nothing but just magnetic phenomena. In all the future discoveries, there's no matter what kind of strange discoveries, just to be short, there will be magnetic interactions.
That's what makes this show easy, Dr. Yu, is that we find headlines every day that confirms what we've been saying for over how many years now, So that's what makes this show so easy to do, right? We should call, instead of science and you, should we call this the magnetic confirmation segment on radio? And this is, look, some people might be driving by and saying, what is this? What is this all about? But this is about leaving a breadcrumb trail for the future, for future generations to see how these things can be understood in a unified theory of physics that makes sense for everybody. I don't care if it's not approved by the establishment, because the establishment has got their head up their tail. Let's look at this story real quick. Scientists discover a new state of matter, liquid glass. This is another one by Carolyn Delbert in Yahoo Finance. Can you give us a quick little takeaway from that? We've got about a minute left.
Yes. Glass research is one of the top material research, because if we can make a spacecraft entirely transparent, be glass material, and then your life much easier to fly or to drive, right? So that's why glass material is fascinating, and this research is based on the study solid glass, and discovered one of the glass, it's a liquid glass that's in between colloid and solid. So that's some kind of state in between. So I just want to share the secret of glass. For glass to work, for any material to be transparent, number one, it can transmit a visible light frequency. So if you tap something, if you're shining something, so you create a vibration frequency. If that material can transmit it, called a visible frequency, visible range of frequency range, that one, and then transmit it to the other side, then you can see it. So number one, that one. Number two, very important. That's where the glass state is different than other solid material state. It is in one direction is connected like solid, but in the side way, the side direction, lateral direction is basically random.
We're out of
You
time.
cannot rotate.
We're out of time, Dr. Yu. We can pick this up again next time, okay? If you want to continue with this. It's very interesting as always. Thanks for joining us.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on. The madness of 2020.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This has just got me going on.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason in the sea of idiots.
The Chris Plant Show. Weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040 WHBO.
President Biden signed two executive actions, one to expand enrollment in the Affordable Care Act in the midst of an historic pandemic.
There's nothing new that we're doing here other than restoring the Affordable Care Act and restoring the Medicaid to the way it was before Trump became president.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki had this to say when she was asked if the president signed too many EOs so far.
He's not going to take executive action alone. That's why he's put forward a number of packages that he's actively working with members of both parties to move forward on.
Psaki says Mr. Biden's main focus is to get his Rescue America COVID-19 and economic relief plan passed. Two people in South Carolina are the first known cases in the U.S. of the South African COVID-19 variant. The UK variant's been detected in at least 29 states. California's reported its second deadliest day of the pandemic, 737 fatalities. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Our Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm David Gornowski, your host, here with our friend Ryan McMakin of Mises.org. How you doing, Ryan? Hey, Ryan, can you hear us? Okay, we're going to try to see if we can get Ryan on. And we're going to do our discussion with him. But I think the big story of today that I want to really hone in on with Ryan or whoever is talking about the issue with GameStop. The GameStop story is something that, you know, has been buzzed in different media outlets, and it's something that I think we can learn from this moment. We can learn a lot about our society. We can learn a lot about the folks who want to control everything we do, everything we say, and want to exploit us like cattle. You know, they talk about exploitation all the time with Marxist theory and universities, but at the end of the day, those people are participating in exploitation by getting people saddled with extreme amounts of college debt, with jobs that are not able to be, received because their education doesn't give them the kind of training they need. So that's what we're going to try to get into here is that kind of a conversation. So Ryan, do we have Ryan McMakin? Nope. Okay. So let's see if we can get him on another line or something, and we'll try to get him on as soon as we can. So this story in Mises.org, GameStop market distortions and manipulations. In the wake of the extreme price explosion in GameStop stock, driven in large part by the subreddit Wall Street Bets on Reddit, there is naturally a great deal of talk about market manipulation and related concerns. Many people are saying that hedge funds manipulate markets. Others are saying that the rich and powerful are now upset because manipulation has been democratized. The Securities and Exchange Commission is now monitoring the situation. Nancy Pelosi has said Congress will get involved. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called for committee hearings into trading apps, preventing users from buying the stocks in question. But Ted Cruz in agreement with that action. This is unacceptable. We now need to know more about Robinhood app's decision to block retail investors from purchasing stock, while hedge funds are freely able to trade the stock as they see fit. As a member of the Financial Services Committee, I'd support a hearing if necessary. This is what AOC said. The situation is still unfolding in this regard, and it is difficult to comment on what may happen in the near future as a result of this astounding turn of events. In all this apparent chaos, it can be hard to see what the root of the problem was, and so breaking it down is likely to be supremely helpful. The big hedge funds did not do this. This is the core of the crisis that has now enveloped them, as their short positions exceeded even the total float of issued shares. And the Wall Street Bets Redditors recognized there was a potential to profit off of what was basically a huge mistake by major hedge fund managers. The reason why these hedge funds didn't bother to cover their shorts is simple. Covering the shorts would reduce the potential profit from the short positions. In a regime of easy credit and low interest rates, it becomes increasingly difficult to gain profits both in and out of the stock market. Short positions have gone from a small component of the complex high-yield, high-risk investor strategy to a major source of profits that can't be found without taking on that sort of risk. So it's an interesting story. And let's see if we have Ryan McMakin now. Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
Hi, David. Great to be with you.
Great to have you again. So I was just reading this story on Mises.org, GameStop Market Distortions and Manipulations by Matthew Tennis. Tell us a little bit about your take on this whole thing, because it's the talk of the town right now.
Well, the most interesting thing about it is the response, not so much the technical details of it. It's almost humorous to watch how flabbergasted, dismayed, freaking out Washington and Wall Street are about it. I mean, really, Wall Street's used to doing whatever they want and exploiting whoever they want. So, and they know that the Federal Reserve and Congress will back them up. For about 35 years, since the late 80s and the Greenspan put began, Wall Street has had special favors. And, of course, they talk about how they're free market. This is not at all right? They all think they're brilliant geniuses, and that's the reason they're rich. No, they're rich because the central bank and Congress exploit the larger population and give money over to Wall Street. And so that's what they're used to. They're used to free money. They're used to having a free ride. They're used to Main Street getting the shaft, so Wall Street has it easy. And this little thing happens where where these small independent traders, where these Robinhood types, so working through Robinhood, not Robinhood itself, managed to cost some money, managed to make Wall Street take a hit, because Wall Street was betting that the GameStop stock would go down, and then some investors decided, let's have the idea of let's make the stock go up, and these hedge fund managers will lose some money. And so that happened, and things didn't go according to plan as Wall Street thought it should. So they immediately start whining and complaining and telling their congressmen that the SEC should get on this, and it's some sort of market manipulation. And what they really mean is regular people aren't staying in their place. They're not taking orders from us hedge fund people, so everybody should just shut up and do what they're told. That's what they really want to happen. And that's what's happening right now. Wall Street is used to Congress having their back and bossing the little people around, and somehow the little people managed to come up with a little way that they could get back at these hedge fund managers, and Wall Street is now appalled and rending its garments and acting like there's some sort of horrible crisis going on.
Right. So, why is it that this is something that, again, is one of those few stories that really unites people on both the populist left and right, isn't it? It's kind of interesting to see, just like the Jeffrey Epstein story, one of those few stories that kind of connects the ire, the populist sentiment, that Wall Street, they can't have people play the same kind of games they play. They cry foul. They get all. It reminds me of what they've done with the social media sites. Ryan. They block all these people, delete all these people. They go to another platform, and then they coordinate with their friends like Apple and Google to delete that platform from their app stores, and then they get the coordination of a giant company like Amazon to take them off their server. They get the GoDaddy folks to get them off of the registrar. It's just on and on and on. And you see the same thing happening here. Well, I guess there's a couple of things happening. One, it's the people, in Wall Street calling for regulation. And number two, it's these Robinhood apps and NASDAQ and other people coordinating, taking down their ability to buy this stock. What's your whole take on these two things?
Well, the Silicon Valley thing is a little bit different. They're not getting actual infusions of cash. They don't have a too big to fail philosophy behind those groups. Silicon Valley, definitely, they're villains. They're bad people. They're bad companies. And I don't understand why people keep using their worthless, pointless products like Facebook. But they've been given a lot of market power because of that. But that's different from what Wall Street has, which is real political power through the power of the purse, through too big to fail, through the fact that the central bank will make sure that the stock market never goes down, that sort of thing. So Silicon Valley is definitely trying to hurt people to benefit themselves, but they don't have the sorts of guarantees that Wall Street has. And on the fact that the left and the right agree about Wall Street, they've got the target right, but the left still doesn't understand what's going on. The left still thinks that Wall Street is about unrestrained free market capitalism, and they still say things like that the financial markets are essentially unregulated, and that this is all this hardcore libertarianism that's running the whole world in terms of financial markets. This total fantasy land stuff. These are heavily regulated markets, but they're regulated and favored by regimes to favor hedge fund millionaires and the owner billionaires who they know that as long as they've got these huge stock portfolios, that the central bank won't allow their value to really go away. And the left doesn't understand that. They think there's something to do with the free market here. There's nothing to do with the free market that's involved. It's a scam that benefits Wall Street greatly, and everyone should stop treating it like it's some sort of capitalist thing.
Right. But that's what capitalism is, always the scapegoat for both the left and the right. And it just, I don't understand. And I'm not really a big believer in being stuck on words. Wasn't capitalism originally a pejorative term?
Yeah, the Marxists use that just like they use bourgeoisie as a pejorative term. But if you try and use other terms, everybody gets confused and they don't know what you're talking about. Right. So we're kind of stuck with them for now.
In terms of marketing, though, free market has a little bit more, emotional support, even among Democrats, I would say. Wouldn't you say, when everybody talks, because I've seen like Michael Moore type say, free markets would be great, but we don't have them, but they're just kind of an ideology. But what we have is capitalism. So there's actually, it seems to be more like goodwill stored into the term free market, but it's just treated as a pie in the sky concept, right?
Well, the term markets does definitely have better PR. And yes, if you know leftists, and I'm friends with some of them, principled leftists are actually very easy to get along with. It's the center left ones, the mainstream ones who are tiresome and awful. But if you hang out with them, they do make very much a distinction between capitalism, which they view as sort of the rigged scam game that I'm describing. And then there's markets, which is, but they view really only markets are these small things, right? So you could have a communitarian community, and there's real markets where people are engaged in personal exchange and that sort of thing. So they don't see anything wrong with that. But once you start to get big, they think it's a politically rigged game, and then that they call capitalism. I don't make a bunch of those distinctions. You got markets, and that would include mostly capitalism, and then you've got intervention. I use Ludwig von Mises' definitions on these things, right? You got socialism, you got interventionism, you got capitalism, and those are the ones we're just going to use those terminology here at Mises.org for a while, and then just make the distinctions. And clearly what we're living under is a highly interventionist system. And it's all based on the idea of making sure that Wall Street doesn't go down.
Ryan McMakin, we're talking about this issue with GameStop. We got a commenter online asked, pure free market is a fantasy. It has never existed and never been used for effectively developing economies. What's your response to that idea?
Well, I mean, you can see everywhere that that's a false position, right? Just look at any country. The more it employs markets and the less it employs socialistic mechanisms or interventionism, the better off it is. This isn't some sort of socialist thing. Note the argument that socialists always use, right? Well, yes, that system is socialist, right? There's a lot of government ownership and it's heavily regulated, but that's not real socialism, because real socialism is you can only achieve it once it's totally state-owned and you can't have any of these bourgeois elements that are contaminating the socialist system. But once the socialist system is pure, then it works perfectly and we've reached utopia. Of course, market people don't use that nonsense, right? You can just look anywhere. Any system that has more markets and less socialism is a better system. It's a richer country. It's where people are better off. It's where they have higher standards of living. So it is a sliding scale very much, but it's the socialists who insist on some sort of pure fantasy system in order to achieve its benefits. You don't need pure capitalism to achieve its benefits at all. You just need some of it, and you've massively improved the standard of living of most of your people.
How pure is our capitalism today in America?
Well, unfortunately, it's more pure than most other countries, which that's a pretty low bar, however. But as a small business person, it's relatively easy compared to other countries. It's certainly much less easy now than it was in the past, but it's still compared to, say, the Italian marketplace where everything is heavily bureaucratized and heavily regulated. Places like Eastern Europe, you still need all sorts of permits and permissions to do all sorts of things. So it is a little bit easier here to start up a small business and so on. But there's also a whole lot of stuff rigged into the game at the high end where it's there for, the old saying is it's socialism for the rich and free markets for everybody else, meaning that if you're rich enough, then the government will bail you out. It'll steal from one group and give to you. So yeah, we got socialism of a sort for the powerful, but if you're just a middle class dude, well, you got to be subject to market competition. You got to make it work. You got to work hard to make sure you do well. Nobody's going to bail you out. So that's kind of the way it works. But yeah, America, countries also like in Scandinavia, which the left thinks is socialist, but they're actually some of the less regulated economies. They just have a big welfare state. But
except
there's a
for
whole
when it
lot of
comes to their
capitalism
alcohol
going on there.
Except for the alcohol in Norway and Sweden. It's a government little monopoly they have there. Very expensive, I heard.
So, yeah, we can look around Switzerland, right? Lots of countries that have a lot of market activity going on. And guess what? People are better off in those places. So this whole thing about how in order to get the benefit of markets, it has to be a totally free market. And that's a fantasy that's never existed anywhere. That's just a nonsense argument. I can just see anywhere there's more markets, people are better off.
What's the one thing that you think is the biggest fix that could help free the market? If free the whales, save the whales. If we wanted to save the market economy in America, if you could only take one thing away, would it be the income tax? Would it be the Federal Reserve? Would it be whatever? Just what would be the first big thing to take to free the market?
Yeah, the number one thing, you got to get rid of the central bank. I mean, that is the number one most damaging thing. Not only is it terrible in terms of propping up the system for people who don't want to be subject to competition, but instead just want to exploit everybody else, you got to get rid of the mechanism for that, and that's the central bank, which also makes these insane amounts of deficit spending possible as well. A regime without a central bank is very much more a regime that has to spend within its means, that can't just shovel money to the rich like it's used to doing now, and would just have to be a totally reoriented system toward markets and toward people who actually work hard are the ones that reap the rewards, rather than those people who can just simply rip everybody off the most because they have a lot of lobbyists. And the central bank is at the key at that. There is kind of a focus on the welfare state and things like that. Those are problematic, but they're really enabled by the central bank. You would have to have a much more responsive government in terms of social spending without the central bank. And so, yeah, it is the key. It is this moneymaker, the central bank, that enables a lot of this profligate spending and other exploitative processes that go on within the regime right now.
Let's take a quick break. We're speaking with Ryan McMakin of Mises.org. Back in just a moment.
this is David Kronosky with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Some out-of-the-area law firms advertise that they are the largest. Do you think large firms help your case? Possibly, but your case will receive personal care from local attorneys Catania and Catania. They are family-owned, Tampa Bay attorneys representing clients who have experienced auto and motorcycle accidents. Your case with Catania and Catania will seek to get a settlement in your favor expeditiously. Catania and Catania, serving Tampa Bay families for over 28 years. Referrals on request. Get the local law firm that will care for your case from beginning to end. They don't get paid if you don't get paid. Catania and Catania, putting families first. Car accident, motorcycle accident, call the local attorneys. Catania and Catania. Offices Tampa. Not attorney spokesperson.
Hi, this is Gary from Good Faith Home Buyers, and I buy houses cash. If you own your house and want to sell it fast, call me at 727-330-6224. That's 727-330-6224. I can pay cash and close fast. I buy houses in any condition, any price range, and any location. I'm not a realtor or associated with any realty company. I'm a private real estate investor who buys several houses a month and wants to buy more. I'll buy inherited houses, divorce houses, behind in payment houses. I'll even buy my tenant won't pay me the rent houses. Do you own a house that is trash and needs thousands of dollars in repairs? Great, because I love buying junky houses. I buy vacant houses, abandoned houses, condemned houses, and foreclosure houses. If you own a house and want to sell it fast, call me at 727-330-6224. That's 727-330-6224.
Get the best coverage of the big game from a source you can trust, TampaBay.com. Powered by the Tampa Bay Times award-winning sports department, you'll get insights on the X's and O's, plus the latest updates from on and off the field. Subscribe now, and you'll receive an additional 20% off total access to TampaBay.com. From the greatest game of all time to the greatest quarterback of all time, choose the Tampa Bay Times. Go to TampaBay.com today.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Granosky here with Ryan McMakin of Mises.org. He's the senior editor there for Mises.org. And looking at some of the news and the headlines today, I wanted to ask you, just get your take on this. I saw one of the commenters on our YouTube stream says, my husband works for the company that does TV listings online and the scroller on TV worldwide. Today, they had a meeting. They're removing Trump's name from all the listings. It's a big project. And apparently that includes like the anywhere online or in periodical papers where you look to see what's on TV, the TV guide. They run all the databases where you find TV program information. The WWF was one of them. Howard Stern episodes, Home Alone 2. I guess that's going to be something they're going to be working on. I don't know anything more than that. But what's your take on these kind of things that are being talked about, whether these come to fruition or not?
Well, clearly all these people have some sort of Trump derangement syndrome. They're obsessed with this guy. They have taken it upon themselves to engage in some sort of cultural warfare against Trump and his memory, I suppose. I don't know what he's up to these days. But, you know, shame on you if you continue to consume these products, right? These people have clearly, if you're a big Trump fan, right, I don't care that much, and I watch TV, and I don't really use these products, so I don't know what they're doing, or if they remove Trump's name or whatever, it doesn't affect me at all. But, you know, it's like with these people who they complain all day about EWTN. It's all this left-wing politics now. Same with NFL. And then you know what? They keep on watching NFL games. They keep on watching ESPN, right? Well, who's the sucker? You are. You kept consuming that product that you're complaining about. So why don't you just switch to other products and stop consuming things and following celebrities who hate you, basically, and get a life and do something else? And so I've just never understood why these people act like they're somehow the victims of ESPN or something. Just stop using them, and it'll be bad for them, and they'll have no control over you.
Well, of course, I like it from the anthropological side because I talk about the scapegoat mechanism, and here's Trump they're trying. And what's so interesting is he's a TV kid. He loves TV, and now TV is going to eliminate him off the face of the television. You know, you just can't make up these kind of these storylines that we're living in. We're almost out of time. We've got a couple minutes left. I wanted to get your take on your article. You know, explain this to us about why the Utes, which is a tribe, a native tribe, opposed Biden's plan to limit oil drilling. This is a story you put out yesterday on Mises.org. And give us the rundown on this.
Well, I've written on a variety of Indian tribes over the years. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. There's this idea among many people that Indian reservations are all a lot of just people living in abject poverty, and they all own their property like in some sort of communist union and so on. The reality is much different, especially for some tribes. Many tribes have oil and gas extraction operations and mining as well, and they make money off of that, and they have a lot of skin in the game, right? They've got this property, and they try to use it. In many cases, they're able to get a lot of income so they can distribute the profits to their members in a sort of annuity, I suppose, that goes out to members. And some tribes are very, very good at this. And the Biden administration handed down these new orders saying, oh, no more new drilling, and we're going to really rein in any sort of extraction efforts now. And they kind of hinted in there that this would apply to the tribes as well, because the feds still treat a lot of this tribal land as if it's essentially federal land. Mm-hmm. And the Ute tribe took big exception to that, pointing out that attempts by the feds to regulate tribal drilling was a huge attack on their sovereignty and their local control. And it was just an interesting case because it noted that there's very much a conflict between environmentalists and tribal interests in a lot of cases. And the tribes themselves have noted this in a tribal news outlet from last December. They noted that the history of environmentalism is in many ways basically anti-Indian, that they've used that as an excuse for many years to curtail Indian rights, to shrink Indian lands, to run Indians off their land so we can put a national park here and so on. That's what happened with some of the original national parks like Yellowstone and so on. It's just an excuse to get rid of Indians also. So there is a bit of a tension there, and that's what's going on now. And just the whole thing really betrayed the fact that a lot of these notions that people have of reservations and tribes and their money management and stuff isn't true at all. But as they become more and more active stewards of the natural resources within their lands, they're going to increasingly be a target of these rich white people who pretty much set what environmental policy is and may very well end up being a victim. I know that in the short term, the administration said, yeah, this doesn't apply to you tribes. You can keep drilling or whatever. I think in the long term, you're going to see a lot more headbutting there because the tribes are going to want to actually use their land in a way that the whites and the feds have been able to do for decades, if not more than a century. And now they're trying to assert some control over that. But these environmentalists from Connecticut, they don't want any of that. They imagine that we can't let these Indians do what they want because they might foul the environment. And clearly the environment should be controlled by us wealthy people. And I expect to see more conflict on that over the years.
Yeah, how privileged of them to do that. How nasty. Pretty nasty. Huh? Ryan, always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, David.
Mises.org is their website, MISES.org, where you can find commentary and articles like Ryan has talked about today. I'm David Gronowski. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. Godspeed.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park, Tampa Bay's all new News Talk.